What's been interesting has been the language that has emerged over the last 18 months as we've seen the sort of the mask slip off the TRIPS agreement and what it was designed to be. And I think language is really important. I want to quote from George Lakoff, who's a cognitive linguist and philosopher, who says language works by activating the brain structures called frame circuits used to understand experience. They get stronger when we hear activating language. Enough repetition can make them permanent, changing how we view the world. So I think the question I would like to pose to the other panelists, but also those of us who've been in this field for a long time, is what kind of language will we continue to use as we move through this TRIPS waiver, but even beyond it? And I'm going to be critical of no one individual institution or whatever, but whether it be funders, whether it be global North NGOs, whether it be the desire to try and get medicines to as many people as possible, given the structures that had been implemented, we started then talking about voluntary measures. And so already within the space of a decade, at least from when India was really kind of facing its changing laws, but this is for everyone, we went from sort of really talking about almost structures of colonialism or neocolonialism to then voluntary measures that we were asking for handouts. And I think that's really a lesson. There was a good article in The Atlantic just this weekend about sort of the downfall of public health. And so when I see this trajectory of language, of how we've gone away from our core because we were asked to innovate by funders like Unitate and what have you to come up with these voluntary measures, we've actually moved away from the core issues that what these TRIPS agreement was about. And that's not to blame anyone, but that is for us to reflect upon as in terms of how we will move forward from here after the aftermath or whilst we are still living this pandemic. And so it's for me, it's interesting because there has been a reemergence of the term decolonizing global health, which has been happening sort of largely since the Ebola crisis, I believe. And it's not a new term, but it's actually people talking about health structures, health systems, funders, who control what. And I think if we are really to move forward and use this opportunity that the TRIPS waiver has presented, it's going to be important is how we speak about it. It's been quite telling, the language that has come up throughout the last 18 months of people talking about neocolonial structures, apartheid, global south, all these terms which we had forgotten, and maybe language reappears because of the times that we live in. And we're seeing that in terms of just wokeness and just generally. And so for me, I think it will be a catastrophic error if we go back to speaking their language of flexibilities and voluntary measures. Naturally, they will exist, but we need to create a new language that is going to actually make us realize that if we are really to evolve from these structures, we have to start framing them in the ways that ultimately what this is really about. And I think this pandemic has shown that. And the only way forward, if we want to really use this effort to kind of realize some of the changes that are desperately needed, it would be to change the language that we talk. I think if we go back to reverting back to what exists, and I know it's hard because that's how our minds are wired now, it's on all of us to actually start a new language.